In 1652, the Dutch, under the VOC, or Dutch East India Company, first established modern Cape Town. Fast forward to 1795, during the French Revolution, a French army conquered the Dutch Republic, and the Prince of Orange fled to England and requested that they take over his colonies before France could. Fast forward to 1814, and tensions began to rise between the British and the Dutch colonists, now called the Boers. As the British began to expand their holding in South Africa, they began to ban the Dutch language and culture, replacing it with their own. Due to these tensions, in 1835, the Boers began the Great Trek, where tens of thousands of people traveled into the heart of South Africa and established two main kingdoms, the Orange Free State and the South African Republic. These states were recognized by the British in 1854. But the Boer nations faced hardships throughout the next few years, as they were constantly at war with the Zulus and other native tribes, and the British refused to offer military assistance or financial aid to the Boers. Eventually, the king of the Zulus, Cetshwayo, finally established a peace between the Boers, British, and the Zulus, ending hostilities between each other. Until 1867, when diamonds were discovered in South Africa, specifically Zulu and Boer territory. And as a result, the British government wanted to secure every diamond mine they could, which meant they canceled the treaties they had signed with the Boers and the Zulus. By 1877, due to their constant wars with the Zulu tribe, these republics were nearing bankruptcy. The republics agreed to be annexed by the British, and the British, as a result, tried to unify South Africa by imposing new laws and new taxes on the Boers. Shortly thereafter, the British ignited what became known as the Anglo-Zulu War. Tensions finally flared up in 1880, and on December 16th, Paul Kruger gathered 10,000 men and officially declared independence from the British. 4 days later, on December 20th, a column of British reinforcements sent to the city of Pretoria were intercepted by Boer forces. At first, the Boers demanded they leave, but the British refused, and instead were surrounded and basically massacred by the Boers. Only 2 Boers were killed and 5 wounded, but the British resulted in 70 dead, with 112 captured, with the rest wounded. With this great victory at hand for the Boers, on December 27th, they began besieging several cities, including Lydenburg, Marabastad, and Rustenburg. The British had decided they had enough, and General Pomeroy Colley was sent with over 1,200 men to reinforce and retake the besieged cities, but was intercepted, and the first shots of the expedition were fired on January 16th. At Elandsfontein. Not much is known about this engagement, but 8 Boers were wounded, while the British lost 4 dead and 6 wounded. But the British continued their advance. On January 28, met the Boers again at Laing's Neck. This time, though, the column faced a force of 2,000 Boers dug into defensive positions. The battle was long, but it was another British defeat. 14 Boers were killed and 27 wounded, but the British suffered 84 dead, with 2 captured and several others wounded. But the British still refused to retreat, and on February 8th, at the Battle of Schuenshoot, 450 Boers fought against a force less than 300 men. The battle resulted in another devastating defeat for the British. 8 Boers were killed and 10 wounded, but the British suffered 69 dead with 77 wounded. Despite this battle, the British decided to continue advancing, and on February 27th, the British pushed forward again and successfully claimed the top of Majuba Hill. But instead of building up defenses, when asked should they do that, the British commander, General Colley, responded, "The hill is defensible. It's practically defensible by itself." But the Boers, with 450 men, literally charged up the hill, charged straight through bullets, battled their way on the top of the hill, and forced the British off their position. What's worse, General Colley was killed during the rout. The battle ended in a devastating defeat for the British. Only 1 Boer soldier was killed, with 5 others wounded, but the British suffered 92 dead, with a further 59 captured. This was the last straw for the British. They finally, as they say, threw in the towel and ended the war by offering peace negotiations. On March 25th, the Boers and the British met in the city of Pretoria, and as they discussed, the war still continued with the sieges of the nearby cities, but eventually the British and Boers signed a treaty. The treaty stated that the British confirmed the Boer self-government, but not independence, while the Boers submitted to British rule over the foreign affairs. So though not a complete victory, it was a victory against the British. The cities eventually surrendered one by one, with the last city, Marabastad, surrendering on April 2nd. This was the first war that the British had lost since the American Revolution. That was incredible. In the end, the Boers had lost only 30 men, while the British had lost 417 dead. Though the British would remember this, though what happened after would eventually help trigger the Second Boer War. Though that's a story for another time. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check me out over on Patreon. The link is in the description.